Today on Strategy Simplified, we're doing a live case, but we're switching things up a bit. Today we're simulating the full first round interview block with Morais, a biochemistry PhD candidate who's looking to move into the strategy consulting space. We'll put on the timer for 30 minutes and simulate the full first round interview session. Morais wanted to work on being more structured as he works through the case. I chose this case to test Morais's ability to structure throughout a qualitative discussion. Follow along and think through how you would respond to each prompt. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. All right, Morais, I got to see your resume. Thanks for sending that along, of course, ahead of time. Got to take a quick look at it. Of course, today in this interview, we're going to go through a case. Before we jump into that, would love it here off the bat if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, again, my name is Morais Brown. I'm a fifth-year graduate student at Albert Einstein in the Bronx, New York. I study enzymes. I have an upcoming meeting to decide whether I can start writing my dissertation, so I'm wrapping up right now. And I kind of want to go from the bench to a more management, business-oriented career trajectory. So that brings me here, and hopefully it takes me somewhere successful.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you had to guess today, when do you think you're going to be done with that degree?
I'm ballparking. I have a meeting next week.
Sure.
They give you They give you 6 months after the go ahead to write your dissertation. So I'm ballparking around October or August, between August and December, maybe. But sometimes there's curveballs in the process that will push you over to the next year. But
you're saying this year?
Yeah. But you never know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, we're going to shift over into our case, and it's excited to see what you think about this problem. You ready to go?
Yep.
Okay. All right, Morais, let me tell you a little bit about your client today. So your client is a major retailer. They're thinking about expanding a new retail concept into the United States. 2 years ago, this client noticed that in Mexico, shopping is a family affair. Entire families travel to the stores together. And that there's various stores in Mexico that cater to these customers by providing different activities, music, and activities geared towards children, as if it were an entertainment center. So our client, they copied the concept and they invested in a major clothing store in southern Texas, also expanding it in terms of being an entertainment center as well, targeted at the Mexican-American population. They added and included extras such as hot Mexican food and provided live music as well. The initial sales from this pilot store are at acceptable levels. However, few Mexican Americans have been shopping there, and when they do, the data shows that they're only buying highly discounted items. In fact, many Mexican Americans in the area still prefer to buy clothes and items in local discount stores. The client wants to expand the stores across the entire southwestern U.S., but wants us to analyze this approach and gather some guidance on how to undertake this.
All right. So thank you for that prompt. If it's all right, I just want to run back through the prompt to make sure I got all the pertinent details.
Okay.
That's okay. Mm-hmm. So basically, our client is a retailer currently in the U.S., and they've noticed that in Mexico, shopping centers are family oriented with music, children activities, entertainment, and they want to kind of copy this way of this business strategy. And so they started basically a pilot program in southern Texas and South Texas aimed at the Mexican community, where they serve hot food, live music, but they've noticed that the Mexican customer base in Texas have been only taking interest in their highly discounted items and they also prefer to buy it like discounted products, things like that. So what they want us to do is analyze. Their goal is to expand throughout the U.S. and they want us to analyze this situation in Texas and provide some recommendations for how they should approach their countrywide strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're targeting the southwestern U.S. Yeah, but
yes, okay.
I'm with you on the rest that you recapped there.
All right. So just a clarifying question. Do they have a target whether it comes to the amount of cities that they want to deploy in or any profitability targets? What's their main quantitative target when it comes to the implementation of their business, of their strategy, of theirs?
Yeah, we haven't dove into depth on that yet. There's no specific target metrics that we're aware of. They are profitable based on the pilot so far. They want to make sure that they would maintain profitability if and as they expand, and then increase that profit margin for sure.
Okay, and also, are they targeting the Mexican population throughout the Southeastern? Like, is that their customer segment?
Well, the initial vision was to target the Mexican American population.
Okay. Okay, sure. In that case, I think I will explore any other ideas as I progress along the case. So is it all right if I take a few minutes to come up with a strategy on how I can approach this case?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right, thank you.
We'll be right back after this quick break. The best way to prepare for case interviews is through out loud practice with a partner. If you're looking for case practice partners, we can help. We have a free LinkedIn group you can join to find partners at your level and in your time zone. The link to join is in the show notes. In addition, we have a team of trained MBB coaches who can work with you via one-on-one Zoom sessions to help you get ready for case interviews. Whether you're starting from scratch or just need a little bit of extra help to get over the hump, our coaches have seen it all and will customize each session to your specific needs. If you're looking for a tailored and structured case prep program, look no further. Again, the link to join is in the show notes.
All right, so I'm ready to discuss my framework. So I have in some cases it's 3-tiered, in some levels it's 2-tiered. So, but the things because we're considering expanding into the southwestern United States, I want to look at some different modes of expansion, broken down into inorganic and organic ways of expansion. Organic has to deal with what we can do within our own company, and inorganic help we could get. So inorganic means include possibly partnering with already established companies or chains throughout the southwestern United States who already have a strategic methodology in these areas that we don't currently have, partnership or some type of joint venture strategy. So that's the inorganic way. To break down the organic ways, we could consider our current revenue streams. So our shopping expertise, or new revenue streams, potentially through new types of ways to sell products besides shopping centers. So maybe an online retail or different types of products besides what you would potentially get at a shopping center, or services. And that would be new revenue streams. Within our current revenue streams, now we can look at basically what the things we've noticed in our pilot population inside Texas. So we know that our customers are very price sensitive. So I'm foreseeing some type of demand curve eventually, but we want to knock down price, look at different types of pricing strategies. So competitive pricing, we know that they are sensitive to prices. So analyzing regional competitors, the way they price, and having a competitive pricing strategy, or if not a competitive pricing strategy, we could analyze a cost-based pricing strategy where we target a certain margin after our costs of production, and then besides the pricing component of our current revenue stream, we could look at a quantity-based component. So we know that this certain customer segment has price sensitivity, which limits our potential revenue growth. So we might be able to look into new customer bases. We might be able to lower prices, and hopefully that generates more quantity. We might look into better marketing strategies to entice them, help them to see more value in what we have to offer, so that they're willing to spend more. We could look into possibly better distribution channels. Maybe this subpopulation, we're not optimizing the way we bring attention to our services. Or we could just make better products, have better attractions. Maybe they don't consider the value they get from our products to be worth what our products currently are. So increasing the value of our products might convince them to buy a more expensive product. So this is how I want to break down the problem. And I guess a question that I have for you is, do you have any recommendations on an approach you should take, or do you want me to recommend one?
I'd like to hear your recommendation on what you think is most important, or where you would like to start.
All right. So because one you highlighted in the prompt that our base is very price sensitive and they prefer discount pricing, I think it's best to first look at maybe the price sensitivity of our customer base, maybe a supply price demand analysis, if that information is available.
So the initial target customer, they thought that they were designing this type of center to target the Mexican-American customer. Our research shows that Mexican culture does tend to place a very high value on families, and that they appreciate any activity that allows the whole family to be together. Also, as mentioned before, the retail store concept, the pilot that our client has put into Southern Texas, they sell these extras such as hot food, live music. They also have games. Our client believed that by giving families a space to gather, that they would purchase these extras. We're not sure if this hypothesis is holding true. What data would you need, or what approach would you take to validate it?
So, all right, so I'm going to structure this problem. So we're not sure if having community gathering centers leads to increased revenue or profits. So we can break this down into our revenue with community gathering centers and our expected revenue without, on a more individualized basis and without these community gathering centers, and if we can compare expected revenues from both of these options, we can kind of make a decision on the direction we might want to go down.
Okay. I don't expect that our client has the funds to set up a whole new pilot that is not in the community center arena. What's another approach, or what's another way that we could test and prove or disprove some of these hypotheses?
Okay, so we don't have the means to do another pilot outside of on a non-community basis. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
So we can only analyze this problem through the community-based preference that the Mexican American community has.
Yeah, based on the current operations that our client has set up, what could we look at there?
So we could break this down into the types of attractions that we have to offer and see which attractions generate more interest, and based on that, concentrate on. So you said we have music, food, and activities. So if we could break down the revenue profit that each of these segments generate, we have something that we could focus on and possibly expand this throughout the southwestern U.S.
Okay, so you would want to take a look at perhaps sales data as it relates to the different offerings that this business, is giving. What else might you want to look at?
Okay, so we could look at different offerings. One idea that I have that may not be relevant but I'm going to throw it out there, is to look at a different customer segment besides the Mexican American community in this space.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that.
So we could look at the Native American population, Asian, African American, white population, and there might be either we could add them to our customer base, or if our resources are limited, replace our customer base if we can expect more value from another demographic.
Yeah. So our client originally thought that if they designed this type of business, that it would attract the Mexican American consumer. As it turns out, from this pilot concept so far, it has not really been attracting very many Mexican Americans. It's been attracting customers with large disposable incomes who are generally middle class or upper middle class white consumers. These consumers are largely buying Mexican souvenir items, and they enjoy the fun atmosphere and the music. The Mexican Americans living near the store seem to only be shopping there if there's some special item that's highly discounted and not available in other local discount stores. The Mexican American segment has not been bringing their families to the center, and they've not been paying for the family activities, games, or food. The Mexican American consumers that have come to this business are generally from lower to middle income brackets and have little disposable income. Given this new information, what suggestions would you have for the client?
All right, thank you for the information. So I could break this down into two areas of approach. One, we could target either one demographic, or two, we could target both demographics. So if we look at targeting one demographic, we could look at the Mexican community, or we could look at the white population. And if we break down the Mexican community, since we know they're price sensitive, we could look at getting them to buy a higher quantity of low priced items in order to generate revenue. Of low priced. And if we look at the white upper middle class white population, we could get them to potentially buy more higher priced specialty items and not focus so much on quantity, but maximizing price and try to maximize our revenue that way. Now, if we look at targeting both, we can create a strategy where we provide options that satisfies both demographics and allows them both to, so low priced and high priced items that target both populations.
Which demographic do you think it makes most sense to target?
Currently, it makes sense to target the white population, since our current program shows that they're populating our centers more than the Mexican population, and they have a higher willingness to buy higher priced items. So it seems that right now they fit both the quantity and the price component of our profitability growth strategy.
Yeah. What are other things that this makes you want to look into or think about for the client?
I'd like to, all right, so you mean separate from the demographic situation or within the demographic?
Yeah, just overall, based on the conversation we're having so far, what does that make you want to dive into next?
I would like to consider the specific types of products that this population finds intriguing. We already discussed that they're Mexican souvenirs, but if we could identify what types of souvenirs, the profit margin we have on these souvenirs, maybe we can zero in on this and create a more specialized business around these types of souvenirs that might be attractive to the wider southwestern United States region.
Mm-hmm. What else?
We could also look into, because this was an unanticipated discovery, that our centers are attracting the middle class white population. Now that we've confirmed that these are a potential customer base, we know what accidentally attracted them. Now we can look into what purposely attracts them. And, so possibly outside of souvenirs from other cultures, we could look into things that maybe they're more American-oriented products that they'd be willing to spend even more money on, or to purchase. So we could factor in an international and a national product component.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that the client has been successful or not successful so far, based on what you know?
Based on what I know, it appears that they've been unsuccessful, since their primary goal has not been attained, and all success that they currently have is from incidental factors that they didn't anticipate. So it's likely that those factors are not optimized.
Okay. Well, all right, Morais, based on what we've talked about so far, what would you recommend to the client?
I'd recommend to the client to. Wait, is it all right if I take a minute to come up with this, or do you want it on the spot?
Sure, you can take a second.
All right, I'll take a second. So I'll think out loud if that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
So client should focus on middle to higher class white population. Client should continue sales of souvenirs that this population finds attractive. Clients should conduct customer survey of this segment to explore what they find attractive. Another thing is clients should conduct a price elasticity analysis to determine the maximum revenue they could obtain at what price level will allow them to generate maximum revenue. And based on, I didn't include that. Oh, no, okay. And based on these decisions, the client should conduct pilot programs in various regions of the southwestern United States to determine whether the strategy might prove successful. Some risks involved are that the findings that upper middle class white Americans are attracted to souvenirs is a very regional phenomenon, and this might not expand toward the broader southwestern United States, and that different the same segment in different regions of the country might have different tastes. So that's what the benefit of the customer survey is throughout the region is for. And other risks, and one more risk is alienating the Mexican American community if it turns out that your shift in focus might come off as discriminatory. So that's another thing to consider.
Okay. Really appreciate those thoughts. We really are at time, but I think we have an opportunity for one question. If you had any questions for me here at the end of this interview about the job that you're applying for or the firm.
We'll be right back after this quick message.
Whether you're wanting to look your best for an upcoming interview or trying to find a gift that they'll actually enjoy for years, check out Handcrafted by Delsey's minimalist gold jewelry. Each piece is made by hand in Austin, Texas, using high-quality materials that are great for sensitive skin. Every pair of earrings is designed to be classic and versatile, elegantly complementing both professional and casual looks. There's lots of tough decisions to make in life, but jewelry doesn't have to be one of them. Shop at handcraftedbydelsey.com. That's DELCIE. Or follow the link in the show notes below.
I guess I didn't expect this case to be as qualitative as it was.
Morais, I'm putting you on the spot. If we were at the end of your 30 minutes interview and the interviewer asked you, hey, what question do you have for me? What would be a question that you might ask them?
I would ask, I don't know.
All right. Well, we'll come back to that later. That's okay. Go your first train of thought. How did you feel overall about the case? How did that strike you?
I expected something that wasn't conventional. I expected to do some calculations, but it seemed to be mostly qualitative and more of like a structuring type of case. Overall, it was a good case. It tested my ability to brainstorm and structure and structure and
How well do you feel like you did?
75 out of 100.
Hey, gave you a 30-minute slot and we took those 30 minutes, right? Now what would be ideal? This is a 20 to 25 minute case. It gives the opportunity to have a little bit of relationship building and context setting up front in the 30-minute slot. But then at the end, I do, as the interviewer, I want to leave you the opportunity to ask me a question or two at the end. So if any, I may even cut you off at the very end so that you can ask me something. You need to be prepared for those, kind of bookends. And we didn't prepare you for that today, like before you came into this. So you were a good sport and being willing to kind of just jump into that in this simulation. But before you walk into the door for any of these interviews, you want to be prepared for the bookends. And those are just as important as the case that happens in the middle. To start off this conversation, you want to have that 2-minute answer prepared, somewhere between 90 seconds and 2.5 minutes long. Tell me a little bit about yourself or walk me through your resume, right? It's only one component part to the broader fit interview preparation, but it's the most important answer to have nailed down and to be prepared to pretty consistently repeat that story so that over a short period of time, I can get to know the highlights about who you are, kind of how you've worked through your educational and or professional career up until this point, and what you're looking for next. And so what those on the call didn't fully get to hear, right, is, Morais, I think that, from what I've seen, you come from a heavy STEM background, right?
Yeah.
And you're in a PhD program right now. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so not fully. And so if we're interviewing you for a first round opportunity for a generalist position, it is very reasonable that you could have one case where we're not going to give you any math, because I feel like from your background and your resume that you may be more adept in that space. If anything, based on, being an advanced degree candidate that's not an MBA, I want to test your business acumen. I want to test what you know, generally speaking, about the business space and the business world and the way that we think about business, the way that you would analyze a particular client or organization, etc. And so this would be a very reasonable first round case for you to get. And you would expect the next 30-minute case that you went into might be really math focused. Maybe you're going to have to analyze some graphs and charts and do some various calculations, et cetera. But you're right. This was a more qualitative case, and really giving you the opportunity to wrap your head around the space, put yourself in the mindset of the client, be able to give to try and dive into the problem and give recommendations around a particular space. I'm going to do some more feedback. We'll get to questions here in a few minutes. So I don't think it went super well today, right?
That's fine.
Now, Morais, you do amazing at staying cool, calm, and collected. I think that your opportunity to brainstorm and come up with a lot of ideas, you were able to showcase that as we went through the conversation. There were a couple of places that I feel like that really stood out. But overall, It was not a super great showing today. We started off with a long upfront background prompt, right? We started off with the "tell me about yourself" question, which we weren't prepared for, but you will be the next time around. And then we moved into the case. There were some issues of time management in general as we went through, right? After I give you the background prompt, I want you to have that synthesized, filtered recap. You can be punchy and bullet pointed in the way that you repeat the core information back to me, but you don't have to recap the entire storyline back. So your recap today was about 1 minute and 20 seconds long. And absolutely that should be less than 1 minute, and we should try and get that as close to 30 seconds as possible. This was a longer prompt, but there was the opportunity to probably cut that recap in half. The questions that you asked, I thought were pretty good. Are there any specific target metrics that we know of? And then you asked something about kind of the target segment. And I was trying to nudge you in two different directions. Hey, profit matters to our client, and the initial target segment, target demographic for the client was Mexican Americans. So as we went through the conversation, we were able to find, the pilot has been achieving acceptable levels. It would have been a fine opportunity to ask and follow up on that. What are acceptable levels? What does that mean? Or to try and paint the picture of what are we really talking about here? We're talking about a large kind of physical footprint. The client has invested in a large physical center that includes different types of business. And this business model is that we've created this center with different offerings, different services, and there was an expectation and a design that it was going to replicate successful similar models in Mexico and be an all-encompassing kind of family attraction center. As the story went on, it kind of paints the picture. Instead, this has turned into maybe a little bit of a theme park type idea, because what it's been attracting is a middle to higher income white consumer instead of Mexican Americans. Now, does that by itself mean that the client has been unsuccessful? No, in fact, it doesn't. It just, their original design didn't prove out to be, their original hypotheses weren't true, but that doesn't mean that it's a failed business overall. That doesn't mean that they've been unsuccessful. I would have told you that acceptable levels, and I think that we got to this kind of understanding that they were profitable, but maybe not at the levels at which the client would hope to see, or profitable at the level which would allow them to continue to expand across the southwestern U.S. So what would we want to do at this instance? So what would we want to do at this juncture? When we think about the structure, I really want to investigate more about the business model. I want to investigate more about the different offerings and the services that we're utilizing. I want to understand more about the consumers, the target initial consumer of the Mexican American. I want to understand what they've been purchasing, who has been coming to the stores. I want to, explore about other customer segments as well. And I want to stay in that zone of being curious and of investigating about these different things, rather than ideating solutions or brainstorming, different ways that they should move forward. Up front in that structure portion, you want to ask questions. You want to figure out what areas do you want to explore. Instead, you took the overall posture of trying to just solution, when instead that comes later on in the conversation. Now, I thought that you provided a lot of good brainstorming in your structure, but instead we want that to be one step back. We want you to say, what are the other additional things that you need to learn about and the data points that you want to gather, so that you could figure out and come to a recommendation on how the client, if they should, and how then they could expand across the broader southwestern U.S. All those ideas about, like we could lower our prices, we could change our marketing strategy, we can change our distribution, we could increase the quality of our products. Those are great ideating. Those are great possible solutions. And you would expect to give those types of answers later on in a creative question. And so, there was a couple of questions then that came after that structure portion where, asked and talked through how would you validate the original hypothesis that the client came into this business model with. And this is where I'm really looking for kind of a pragmatic, practical approach and a sense of solid business acumen where, again, we're talking about a large financial investment for the client to have one physical center in Southern Texas. They're not going to go build or buy another non-community focused center and then be able to test. It's not really a pragmatic, practical approach to be able to validate this hypothesis. There are other things that we could explore about the current business model and the current set of operations to try and test this hypothesis, like understanding more about the customers that are coming in the door, doing customer profiles about the supposed target demographic of the Mexican American community, learning more about the target model in Mexico, doing perhaps a gap analysis and figuring out if there's certain things that we've been doing differently in Southern Texas than the successful model than what has been seen and what's trying to be replicated in Mexico. Could look at it from a customer standpoint, right, and see whether or not this may actually work and target Mexican Americans, but maybe that need is being fulfilled somewhere else in Southern Texas today, et cetera, right? But kind of breaking down and taking that, it's a scientific approach. It's like, this was the hypothesis. The hypothesis was it works over here in Mexico. So if we build it in Southern Texas, it's going to work. It's going to work the same way. It's going to attract the same people, and it's going to be just as profitable. And so, but that hypothesis may not be true. We need to dive in and understand what actually is true today. Who are we attracting? What are they buying? What's the profit of those things? Which I had no quantitative data to give you, but there was a qualitative story there. It's not attracting the Mexican American consumer. It's attracting a different customer segment, a different demographic, and it's not being replicated in the same success as what the client originally saw in Mexico overall. So how do we figure out where we're at currently now, and we figure out how to kind of test that hypothesis, validate it, prove it or disprove it, and move forward. I want to get to some of the other questions here. Let me have a couple other final comments. We went through a brainstorming section then as well, kind of asked about success or not success, which I've already touched on a little bit. Finally, that recommendation section, just want to remind you that that's that last chance to be really clear and directive and structured. Make sure that you end off on a really strong footing. So I don't think that the think out loud strategy is your best approach. Either practice so that you can think out loud while simultaneously being really direct and not forceful, but still very, very crystal clear, direct, and fast on your execution, or take the pause so that then you can be those things.
I wasn't sure if you were okay with a pause because I initially had asked if I could have a minute. Then you said I could have a couple of seconds. So I thought that was a cue to think out loud or give it to you on the spot.
No, it actually was. It wasn't a particular cue at all.
Yeah.
Just that.
I thought at 30 minutes
sure,
was
you
up.
can take a couple seconds there. Yeah, I did have my eye on the clock, and it was like, well, we're like 3 minutes till, and I'm like, sure, you can take a second.
Okay.
And if anything, it was just a nudge towards, wanting to make the simulation continue to be time bound. But you could have taken up to 60 seconds and then delivered a crisp, clear 60 to 90 second recommendation. Instead, you ended up with a 2.5 minute kind of slowly delivered piece by piece recommendation. And it would have come across stronger if it would have just been, yes, 30 to 60 seconds pause first, and then clearly, concisely, directly delivered 60 to 90 second recommendation. So do you have any quick follow-up comments or questions on any of that feedback before we take a couple of questions from the group to wrap up?
No, I guess when I structure my frameworks, just don't only focus on the solutions, try to think through, try to have some buckets that are non-solution oriented, more like, sifting through the problem.
Yeah, exactly. I want the structure to be areas that you want to investigate and explore. If you want to tack on some little commentary about what solutions that could lean to, that's great, but that should not be your overall positioning. I want you to shift away from the phrase break this down. I know that you need to structure as you go through this conversation and discussion, but if you do go back and listen to this and try and analyze yourself in the future, I think you'll see that you said, well, I'll break the way that I want to break this down. You started a bunch of your answers that way, and just mix it up a little bit.
One of my weaknesses was not being structured enough, so I think I'm overcompensating.
Fair. No, that's a good insight. Yeah, absolutely. And so you starting with the market study structure would have been a good opportunity and a good way to create a structure for this problem. Market study structure is one of our core master frameworks at Management Consulted, and we look at it in terms of 5 categories: market, competitor, customer, company, and then product/service. And then you could have chosen 3 or 4 of those categories or nested those within each other to then start to create those lines of inquiry about the areas that you want to investigate and explore to better understand this problem. Morais had a calm confidence and good presence throughout. Although his structure today was poor, and he may have been thrown off by the non-quantitative nature of the case. Also, by simulating the full 30-minute interview block, we uncovered opportunities to think through the bookends of that time. You have to make sure that you have a game plan for how to engage the interviewer outside the case discussion as well. Morais has completed over 20 cases out loud, but there's always room for improvement. If you'd like help in your case interview process or would like to simulate the live interview experience, work with one of our coaches here at Management Consulted. They're all ex-MBB consultants and interviewers who've been extensively vetted and only coach with us here at Management Consulted. They love working with prospective candidates from various backgrounds, and they'll help you work through full interview mocks or drill in areas you need extra help. You can find a link in the show notes or read more about our offerings at managementconsulted.com. Also, do you have a question about breaking into consulting or anything related to the field? If so, I'd love to answer it on the podcast. Email your question to podcast@managementconsulted.com. Or better yet, send us a voice note. Open a voice recorder app on your phone and record yourself. I'd love to hear you asking the question. Either way, make sure to include your name, location, and question and send it to us at podcast@managementconsulted.com. We'll see you next time.